Hey everyone, today we're talking about Charlemagne, one of the most powerful and famous leaders in European history. People also called him Charles the Great, and he's remembered for building a huge empire and shaping the future of Europe. Charlemagne was born in 742, probably in a place called Aachen, which is now in Germany. His dad, Pepin the Short, had way more power than the king at the time. The Merovingian kings, who had ruled for a long time, were basically just figureheads, while Pepin actually made the big decisions. Eventually, Pepin asked the Pope if it was right for a powerless king to stay in charge, and the Pope agreed it wasn't. So in 751, Pepin became king and started a new dynasty called the Carolingians. When Pepin died in 768, his sons Charlemagne and Carloman became co-rulers, but they didn't get along very well. Carloman was cautious and slow to make decisions, while Charlemagne believed in taking action. When a rebellion broke out in Aquitaine in 769, Charlemagne marched in and crushed it. Carloman refused to help, which made their relationship even worse. Things got more complicated when Charlemagne married a Lombard princess in 770, only to end the marriage soon after and marry a teenage girl named Hildegard. The Lombard king Desiderius was furious and tried to convince Carloman to turn against Charlemagne. Before that could happen, Carloman died in 771, leaving Charlemagne as the sole ruler. Now in full control, Charlemagne ruled with confidence and strength. He was a huge man for his time, over 6 feet tall, and his presence alone made him stand out. He could be warm and friendly, but also tough and brutal when needed. Every year Charlemagne led his army on new campaigns to expand his power and protect his kingdom. In 772, Charlemagne focused on Saxony, starting a long and violent conflict known as the Saxon Wars. He was determined to force the Saxons to convert to Christianity and put an end to their old pagan beliefs. After leaving troops behind to maintain control there, Charlemagne marched south to face the Lombards. In 774, he defeated them and added King of the Franks and Lombards to his title. Later, Charlemagne ran into trouble in the Pyrenees Mountains. In 778, his army was attacked at the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass, where his rear guard was wiped out. One of his most trusted men, Roland, was killed in the ambush. But even after that defeat, Charlemagne refused to back down. He spent the next several years fighting in Spain, Germany, and other regions, winning battle after battle. In 795, a group called the Avars surrendered to Charlemagne. Still suspicious of them, he attacked their fortress known as the Ring and completely destroyed them the following year. By this time, Charlemagne's empire stretched across what is now France, northern Spain, northern Italy, and large parts of Germany. His leadership united lands that had once been divided, and Charlemagne struggled for years to control the Saxons. Every time he thought they were defeated, they rose up again. Before the fighting started, the Saxons had peaceful ties with Francia. They traded goods and helped connect Francia to Scandinavian regions. But in 772, some Saxons were accused of burning a church in Deventer, part of Charlemagne's kingdom. This gave Charlemagne a reason to invade Saxony. Some believe Charlemagne may have staged the attack himself as an excuse for war, since he strongly opposed pagan beliefs. In response, Charlemagne marched into Westphalia and destroyed a sacred Saxon tree called the Irminsul, which represented the Norse tree of life, Yggdrasil. He also killed many Saxons during this campaign. Over the next 30 years, Charlemagne waged 18 campaigns in Saxony, each bringing destruction and bloodshed. In 777, a Saxon leader named Widukind led a resistance against Charlemagne. While Widukind was a capable leader, his forces couldn't stand up to Charlemagne's powerful army. Widukind turned to King Siegfried of Denmark for help, asking him to shelter Saxon refugees. Charlemagne responded harshly. In 782, he ordered the execution of 4,500 Saxons in what became known as the Massacre of Verden. Even after this brutal act, the Saxons refused to give up. Widukind eventually agreed to be baptized in 784 or 785, possibly to end the conflict, and then disappeared from historical records. Despite Widukind's absence, Saxon resistance continued. Charlemagne kept fighting back using aggressive tactics. In 804, he forced over 10,000 Saxons out of their homeland and replaced them with his own people. This finally ended the conflict, but it angered Scandinavian leaders. King Siegfried later attacked Frankish lands in Frisia, but the fighting ended when Siegfried died, and his successor chose to make peace. During these struggles, Charlemagne's influence in Europe grew. Pope Leo III faced serious trouble in Rome when some Roman nobles tried to remove him. Desperate, Leo turned to Charlemagne for help. Charlemagne agreed, and they returned to Rome together. In 800, during Christmas Mass at St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Leo crowned Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor. Some say Charlemagne claimed he wouldn't have entered the church if he had known Leo would crown him. However, since the crown was clearly displayed, it's unlikely Charlemagne didn't realize what was happening. Even if Charlemagne had mixed feelings about it, the title gave him much greater influence in Europe. Despite his new title, Charlemagne continued improving his empire. He worked to strengthen churches, monasteries, and schools. Following the earlier efforts of his father, Pepin the Short, and the monk Saint Boniface, Charlemagne helped religious institutions grow. He also encouraged better farming methods, like crop rotation and improved plows, which increased food production and improved people's lives. Charlemagne's most trusted advisor was Alcuin of York, a respected scholar who believed learning was important. Charlemagne agreed and encouraged education in monasteries, making sure his officials could read and write. To ensure his reforms succeeded, Charlemagne sent inspectors to check that his orders were followed properly. Charlemagne ruled for 14 more years after becoming emperor. When he died in 814, his empire soon began to weaken. His son, Louis the Pious, struggled to maintain control, especially when Viking raids intensified. The Vikings, still angry about Charlemagne's past actions, repeatedly attacked Francia. Louis tried to fight back, but often had to pay the Vikings or give them land to keep the peace. When Louis died in 840, his sons fought for control of the empire. The Treaty of Verdun in 843 divided the empire into 3 parts, weakening what Charlemagne had built. His reforms faded over time, and Viking raids continued until 911, when King Charles the Simple finally made peace with Viking leader Rollo by granting him land that became Normandy. Even though Charlemagne's empire struggled after his death, his impact remained strong. His ideas about a united and organized Europe played a major role in shaping the continent's future. The territories that once belonged to his empire eventually became key parts of modern European countries.